Good morning.
Hello. Good morning, sir.
Welcome, sir. Today we have with us eminent economist and my guru, Dr. Venkatreddy, sir, with us. We'll be speaking on Nobel Prize winning economist and economist work. As we know, 3 economists have received Nobel Prize this year. One is Daron Asimov from Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Cambridge, USA. The other two are Simon Johnson, again MIT, USA, and then
Hello. Voice is not there, Ramesh.
ಕೇಳಿಸ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ ಸರ್? ಉಮೇಶ್ ಕೇಳಿಸ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ವಾ?
ಇಲ್ಲ ಕೇಳಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದೆ ಸರ್, ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಲೌಡ್ ಆಗಿ ಹೇಳಿ ಸರ್.
Yeah, good morning. Today we have with us Professor T.N. Venkatreddy, sir, retired professor from Agriculture University, Bangalore. He has served in the Department of Agriculture Marketing and Business Management. And in fact, he was my guru in College of Fisheries, Bangalore.
Hello. Now we are audible. Now you are audible, Ramesh.
Sir. So, sir will be speaking on 2024 Nobel Prize in Economics and contribution of Nobel laureates in the field of economics. As we know, 3 economists have received Nobel Prize this year. One is Daron Asimov from Massachusetts Institute of MIT, Cambridge, USA. Then the second economist is Dr. Simon Johnson, again from MIT, USA. And the third economist is James A. Robinson from University of Chicago, USA, for their studies on how institutions are formed and affect prosperity. In fact, they have demonstrated the importance of societal institutions for a country's prosperity. Societies with a poor rule of law and institutions that exploit the population do not generate growth or change for the better. The laureates' research helps us understand why this difference in prosperity. In fact, Jacob Swenson, chairman of the Committee for the Prize in Economic Studies, says, quote, reducing the vast differences in income between countries is one of our time's greatest challenges. The laureates have demonstrated the importance of societal institutions for achieving this, unquote. So, sir will be speaking about the works of these 3 Nobel laureates. Before beginning the talk, let me give a brief introduction of sir's academic achievements. Sir is an MA in economics from Bangalore University. Later, he has undergone trainings in many renowned institutes like University of Philippines, then Asian Vegetable Research Institute, Taiwan, then NSC, New Delhi, then Indian Institute of Management, Lucknow. Sir started his illustrious career as an instructor in economics, then assistant professor of finance, Department of Economics, College of Agriculture, Dharwad. Then he was also instructor in fishery marketing, College of Fisheries, Mangalore. When sir took basic economics class for our batch, then we learned some economics because of sir. And sir also has served as assistant professor of seed marketing in UAS-GKVK, USB, then assistant professor of marketing, Department of Agmaco, US, Bangalore, then associate professor of agriculture marketing, then again in the University of Agricultural Sciences. Then sir became professor of KSCAMB chair, and then at the Department of Agriculture Marketing, US, Bangalore. Sir has served in many committees. He has served as member of the 12th Plan Evaluation Team of the Indian Coffee Board. Then he is the founder mentor of Srinivaspur Mango Farmers Producers Company, Kolar. He is also a member of the quinquennial review team of Indian Institute of Seed Research ICR, and member of the Board of Studies PG and UG, Agriculture University Bangalore, member of the study team on feasibility of establishing Raita Sante in Karnataka, and he has served in many other committees as well. He is also founder and advisor to Srinivasapur Mango Farmers Producers Company. He is also served as advisory committee members for many PhD students in the Department of Agriculture Economics, Agriculture Extension, and Food Sciences. He was also a member of research team on restructuring of extension structure of Indian Coffee Board, Government of India. He has also served as member of team to evaluate the land owning patterns in Karnataka, Andhra, conducted by RDI CT USA, funded by the World Bank. Sir is a life member of many associations like Agriculture Economics Research Association, Indian Economic Association, Indian Society of Agriculture, Agribusiness Management, Indian Society of Seed Technology, and so many. He is also ex-secretary of UAS Campus School, Nobel, and secretary of UAS Bangalore Teachers Association. Sir has visited 27 countries in 4 continents. I'm sure Sir will be traveling to other 2 continents very soon. He has published more than 40 research papers and popular articles in many national, international journals and news dailies. He is also academic advisor for Maitri Vidyaniketan Institute, Bangalore. With this very brief introduction, I request Sir to
Okay,
take
sir.
and deliver the talk. Over to you, Sir. Once again, welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Ramesh, for kind favor of introducing as your teacher. I derive more of satisfaction if any of my students call me sir as a teacher than what personally we have achieved in the academic area. I thank the KSTA and Ramesh for inviting me to share my views and thoughts on the Nobel laureates in economics for the year 2024. And mainly what is their contribution. If you look at these three members, they're immigrants, 2 from UK and another from Turkey, migrated to America, got jobs, employed in most reputed reputed institutions, both in economics, MIT and New York LA University. And they got this Nobel Prize for their contribution on how institutions are framed and affect prosperity of the nations. These 3 members originally from different continents, Africa, Europe, gone to North America, and because of their abilities, they were able to work with reputed institutions. And James Robinson, born in 1960, worked as a professor and got his PhD from LA University in USCA. Daron Acemoglu, born in 1967 in Istanbul, Turkey, got his PhD from London School of Economics and Political Science. Similarly, Simon Johnson, born in 1963, working in Massachusetts University of Technology, Cambridge, and all of them worked on the topic importance of organizations, institutions, and most importantly, the democratic institutions. So the Economic Nobel Prize 2024 underlines the connection between wealth of nations and democracy. How democracy can add to the wealth of the nations. Important studies of these 3 economists related to institutions, how these institutions are formed, and how they affect prosperity of the nation and the people. The trio demonstrated how societies with a poor rule of law and institutions that capitalize on its population with an exploitative intent neither generate growth or change for the better. So to put it in other words, they have worked and demonstrated that poor rule of law will not add to the betterment of the people. Their research explored the aftermath of colonization. Particularly, UK ruled every country of the world except very, very few. Maybe less than 30 countries were not invaded or ruled by UK and European colonialists. So their research explored the aftermath of colonization, including India, were ruled by UK. Understand why global inequality persists today, especially in countries dogged by corruption and dictatorship. These countries are very, very poor. Their per capita income is less. Their standard of living is very, very low. So they have gone through the different aspects, particularly from colonization point of view, and these laureates trace their theory to the colonialism, where they link quality of institutions, importance of institutions to the number of settlers in colonies post-independence and also pre-independence. The research conducted by Daron, Johnson, and Robinson has significant implications for understanding and addressing global poverty. In fact, Amrutaya Sen, an economist from India, also worked in the similar lines. And these three economists strengthened the views of importance of government institutions in understanding and addressing the global poverty. In some places, the aim of colonists was to exploit the indigenous population and extract resources for their own benefit. And very oftenly, Indian economists and others accuse UK for exploiting resources from India to enrich UK. The aim of the colonists was to exploit the indigenous population and extract resources for their own benefit. But it is not same with all countries. With few countries where the colonialists don't want to go and settle, they exploited. Whereas the countries where the colonialists, particularly UK, went there, settled there, developed those countries, their strategy for growth and development of the country, eradicate poverty, was entirely different. Where the countries where population is very, very high and less scope for colonialists to settle, they didn't bother much about the welfare, progress, and development of those economies based on the opinion of these Nobel laureates for the long-term benefit of European migrants. So the colonists formed inclusive political and economic system. You take, for example, Australia, South Africa, and many other countries, including USA. This varied across Europe and Asia and Africa. So their objective was entirely different. The main takeaways from their body of work of these three economists is importance of democratic setup and the creation of the right institutions that foster investment. Whether you take, for example, Planning Commission or Niti Aayog or RBI, or the list grows, public sector undertakings in India after independence, mainly responsible for growth. So the importance of such institutions is very, very important. You take our neighbors who got independence from British on the same day, and you see their prosperity, whether it is Bangladesh or Pakistan. So the development of institutions, in spite of British not encouraging much to develop institutional network, a progressive institutional network, India was able to do after independence, as per just to substantiate the views of Nobel laureates. The implications of their research suggest that efforts to reduce global poverty should focus on reforming political and economic institutions. Reforms. In fact, if you look at economic reforms in India after 1991 to fall in tune with the WTO and globalization, taken the Indian economy to the higher rates, higher growth rate, higher per capita income. So reforming political and economic institutions to make them more inclusive. involving everybody in the country, not keeping certain section of the people away from the benefits of this growth and development, is as substantiated by these Nobel economists. So their research demonstrated that societies with political and economic institutions limit popular participation and exploit general population for the benefit of ruling elite tend to less prosperous. In any country, any institutions where they limit the participation of general public, they cannot prosper. They cannot flourish. So you can draw many examples. The contrast, societies with more inclusive institutions, where they take everybody as a part of their institutional network to develop the nations, provide greater economic opportunities for the general population, are historically and currently richer. You can quote the best example is USA, where inclusive institutions are established. Even UK colonialists who were ruling USA, they wanted to settle in USA, they wanted to settle in South Africa, they wanted to settle in Australia, they don't want to settle in India. Hence, they encouraged the establishment of inclusive institutions in those countries where they want to settle and develop the countries. And now they are one among the richest countries in the world compared to other countries. So economic origins of dictatorship and democracy. They have clearly gone to the roots of economic origins of dictatorship and democracy, published by Cambridge University Press. This is the article published by Cambridge University in 2006 by these Nobel laureates. And they have focused on consolidation of democratic societies and creation of democratic societies. They argue that democracy consolidates when elites do not have a strong incentive to overthrow it. So that means a democracy will establish, flourish, involve in growth and development, inclusive growth of everybody, if it is not disturbed by the elitist people within the country. So this process depends on a country to consolidate its democracy without intervention of elites to destroy this democracy, like Afghanistan or Pakistan. This process depends on the strength of civil society in that country, whether it is Sri Lanka or Bangladesh or India or Pakistan, to strengthen the views of the Nobel laureates. Strength of the civil society, the structure of political institutions, democratic political military juntas in say like Rangoon, what is this, our neighbor Burma, structure of political institutions. Also they have gone into the roots of that economic origins of dictatorship and democracy, structure of political institutions, the nature of political and economic crisis. Even they have nature of political and economic crisis, the level of economic inequality. Say, for example, 1% of Indian population owns around 41% of the wealth in India. Economic inequality, particularly after 1980s, is very, very wide. Level of economic inequality, 1%. All this to strengthen the views of the Nobel laureates, the level of economic inequality, the structure of the economy, the form and extent of globalization, and as you are aware, is the buzzword, and how the individual country became part of this global economy. Even they have written a book called Power and Progress. Power and Progress by Daron Acemoglu and Johnson. They have written a book on power and progress. The main focus in this book with their research examples is improving technology and its impact on growth and development and standard of living of common man in a country. Improving, in their opinion, improving technology alone will not always lead to prosperity. If that technology utilization and income generation is rested in few and it is not inclusive growth, it will technological change may not bring change in the common man's living standards, in their opinion, in that book. So the story is consistently the same in these cases. Increase in productivity, even dramatic increases do not necessarily produce shared prosperity. And you say, for example, green revolution, gene revolution, technological revolutions are not completely resulted in eliminating this inequality in income and standard of living. Perhaps they produce fortunes for a few people, in the opinion of this economists, Nobel laureates. These new technologies will produce fortunes for few people, but not always broad-based shared prosperity. So in the early and mid 20th century, they concluded that we did not counterbalance industrialist power without choking off productivity gains. In spite of development in 20th century and by innovations, it is not percolated into the common man's kitty. So innovations occurred, technology changed, and wages for everyone pretty much rose in that period, early period. But in the recent past, the whole system is disturbed. After 1980, there was a big switch in the ideology of how to run a business. And the new ideology is often described as shareholder primacy. And the investors in the company wants more dividends, more profits, and not much bothered about their employees, their salaries, their living conditions, in their opinion of Nobel laureates. So they are addressed in this article. While that idea has been around for a long time, after 1980, the emphasis changed. The influential set of people persuaded policymakers and business people that shareholders' primacy meant that you had squeeze workers, exploit the workers as hard as you could, with some exceptions like Tata group of companies, where they considered their employees as their family members and the shareholders and their workers as one. So we should focus on mission usefulness over mission intelligence. The economists focused and indicated that the economies should focus on mission usefulness over mission intelligence. You look at artificial intelligence, Chat GPT, innovations emerging, already emerged, replacing humans. What is the fate of human beings in days to come? Will it add to the prosperity, wealth, happiness of human beings? Needs to be checked. So Microsoft launched this. There are other versions like Google rival, Bard product. Perhaps there will only be two or a few powerful companies in this space. Only few are there. Those companies will get benefited. Does not seem likely that there will be a many in this area. So making machines able to do things that humans can do, perhaps to replace us in those tasks. Human beings, man is replaced by the machine. There are key choices that are still to be made around generative artificial intelligence. And they are focused on what are its implications in future on the very, very existence of human beings. For studies of how institutions are formed and affect prosperity, whether it is Microsoft or Amazon or Reliance or Adani Group, they are of the opinion that how institutions are formed and affect prosperity. There are vast differences in prosperity between nations. There are countries like Namibia where food shortage is so much, they kill wild animals, including elephants, to feed the people. This speaks of vast differences in prosperity and between nations. And the Nobel laureates want some way out to bring these vulnerable sections into the mainstream. And this was done, can be seen in Singapore, can be another contrarian example, has strong institutions. It can be considered an outlier for sure. Similarly, China, though not democratic, almost we can say dictatorship, but because of their institutional network, their prosperity compared to other nations is far, far superior in the opinion of Nobel laureates. There are also some India's neighboring countries which are astonishingly democratic, but tend to get oligarchic. Oligarchic means the power and the wealth is vested in the hands of few. They'll manage the government and the governance. Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Myanmar, our own neighbors, are the best examples and what they have indicated. China has managed to create one of the largest economies with the latest state-of-the-art and infrastructure and production process. The political system is autocratic in China for all practical purpose, but has delivered well, making good for common man. So their work has implications. The Nobel laureates work research, what they have done, has implications for policymakers, global leaders, and their contributions suggest that economic aid and development programs are more likely to succeed when accompanied by institutional reforms. And they indicated that there is a strong felt need for reforming the existing institutions, developing the new institutional network for economic aid and development programs. And a takeaway from the suggestions from this Nobel laureates is, unless there are democratic regimes which foster the building of strong institutions, growth across countries will remain lopsided. So, to take every country in progressive direction, there is a need to build strong institutions. And the best example we can quote, building strong institutions for inclusive growth in India is white revolution, blue revolution, green revolution, and particularly white revolution, National Dairy Development Board, helping the poorest of the poor, virtually no access to the land, owning one cow, living on its income, contributing to the growth of the nation. Amul or Nandini, NDDB promoted KMF, Karnataka Milk Federation, and Amul in Gujarat and Karnataka contributed for growth and development of the poorest of the poor. So one important explanation for this persistent differences in social institutions is examining various political and economic systems introduced by European colonies. Europe, both UK, Spanish, French, these the countries, they have colonized different other countries in the world, including Australia, almost all Asian countries. Examining various political and economic systems introduced by these European colonies, they were able to demonstrate a relationship between institutions and prosperity. Any country that prospered have strong institutional network, inclusive, stable institutional network. They have also gone through and they have developed a theoretical tools that can explain why differences in institutions persist and how institutions can change. There is a lot of difference between institutions in the different countries, and how these institutions can change the very economy and the living of the people. What is required for prosperity to be shared? No doubt, after 2000, say 1990, many countries have prospered. But what is required for prosperity to be shared by everybody in the that country? One requirement is that when a mission arrived to automate away some tasks, new tasks must be created. If artificial intelligence comes, it is time the innovations should start to relocate the technocrats that are who are going to be replaced to find alternative. A good example of Henry Ford and the innovations that brought assembly line production, uh, particularly when electrified production, which has did a bigger and more effective scale than anyone had done before. So this led to automation. Henry Ford led to automation. Some parts or car assembly that had been done by hand were now done by machines. At the same time, uh, the car manufacturing units have spread across the country. No doubt the number of persons employed in this car manufacturing reduced, but more number of cars started producing, more employment, more income, more almost like Keynesian theory of economics. So Henry Ford was a very powerful individual. At the same time, partly because the demand for labor was so strong, trade unions developed to bargain for their rights. And this Nobel laureates indicates that such unified trade unions wanted rules, protections for workers and higher wages. This created a countervailing power against the power of Henry Ford and industrial barons. Left alone to the industrial barons, they will try to exploit the workers, making not sharing the wealth of the nations among equally to all its citizens. So they say there is a need for unified efforts to see that everybody become part of prosperity in the world. And in this direction, America enacted Antitrust Act to reduce the concentration of wealth in the hands of few industrialists. So the same time, governments of those countries like US, UK, and other parts of Western Europe developed the ability to better regulate business. They want to regulate the business for exclusive growth, inclusive growth. There was rise in antitrust thinking, so monopolies were no longer tolerated, and this is part of the present day strategies. Another contribution by these Nobel laureates, and they have written book called Why Nations Fail, book by Daron Acemoglu and James Robinson. Why Nations Fail. Why nations fail, as well as show poor countries are poor because those who have power make choices that create poverty. So those who have power will shape the policy of the government. One of the reasons they have indicated in this book, Why Nations Fail. Book is the result of synthesis of many years of research by these two Nobel laureates on theory of economic growth. On theory of economic growth, they worked for several years, and they have indicated the reasons and the solutions to address this malady in the book called Why Nations Fail. So in 2002, they have written article. They showed through statistical analysis that institutional factors dominate culture and geography in determining the GDP per capita of different countries. So institutional factors dominate over culture and geography. Just because India was culturally very rich, scientifically developed 2000 years back, 10,000 years back, doesn't matter now. What we are today, what our institutions work, matters in the opinion of these Nobel laureates, that institutional factors dominate culture and geography in determining GDP per capita of different countries. So in the 2001, the article written by these Nobel laureates, they showed how mortality among European settlers in the colonies influenced their establishment of institutions and future development of these territories. Say, for example, Europeans came to India, and India was home for so many contagious diseases. And the Europeans, colonists decided not to settle in India. They didn't establish the best institutions, as they thought India is not a safe place to settle because it is overpopulated and many diseases are there. And they have selected sparsely populated countries like Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, USA, and they've established such institutions. And in fact, further, I will give a little more information how this developing best institutions can result in the development of the nations, with the example of USA and Mexico bordering each other, and with a city of example, a tale of two cities. I will give a little more information afterwards. So in this article, they have greatly emphasized the importance of institutions, and they've established such inclusive institutions in the countries where they wanted the Europeans to settle. The book focuses on how some countries have managed to achieve high levels of prosperity. In this book, they have indicated how come few countries can prosper better, while others have consistently failed. So basically, these two Nobel laureates published their first co-authored book on the subject, Economic Origins of Dictatorship and Democracy, in 2006. Economic Origins of Dictatorship and Democracy in 2006. And they have detailed how this democracy and dictatorship contribute to the growth and development of the nations, and the role of institutions. Institutions as the fundamental cause of long-run growth. Assume that there was no NDDB, no Amul, no KMF, no Nandini. So many poorest of the poor today in India might not have a meal a day. So institutions as the fundamental cause of long-run growth, they have emphasized the importance, and it was published by National Bureau of Economic Research in USA in 2004. This is also explained in their paper, Institutions as a Fundamental Cause of Long-Run Growth. This another article published by them, Institutions as a Fundamental Cause of Long-Run Growth. See, for example, right now the government of India focusing on establishing institutions, say nearly 20,000 farmers producer companies, FPOs. Already 27,000 weekly shandies are there in India. Around 8,000 regulated markets are established in India in 1960s. 8,000 APMCs, regulated markets. Importance of these institutions in addressing to the farmers' issues, marketing of farm produce by farmers through the regulated market. By developing this 8,000 APMCs is one of the reasons why at least farmers are getting some income out of the consumer rupee for the food produce. So they have already emphasized, Nobel laureates, role of institutions like APMCs, regulated markets, milk producers, cooperative societies, farmers producer companies, food processing companies, public sector companies, institutions as a fundamental cause of long-run growth, co-authored by these three Nobel laureates. long-term research collaboration between these economists help to understand the role of institutions in developing the nations. So, empirically, they have demonstrated that democracies which hold to the rule of law, not anarchy, monarchy, except some monarchies like Saudi Arabia and exceptional Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates. It is democracies which were flourished in economic development, which hold to the rule of law and provide individual rights, have spurred greater economic activity over the last 500 years. So Daron's most lasting contribution is his essential work on how institutions determine economic growth. This work fundamentally changed the field of political economy. Why nations succeed, why nations succeed, why nations fail is clearly indicated in their article. So the study highlighted the institutional differences rather than geography or culture. Different people may profess different religion, culture, whether it's Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam, Christianity, or other religions. Geography, tropical, subtropical, high temperature, so many differences is there. But study highlighted institutional differences rather than geography or culture plays a decisive role in economic outcomes. The Lyrate's work highlights the importance of supporting democracy and inclusive institutions to promote economic development. They highlighted the importance of supporting democracy and inclusive institutions. In one of their works, the Lyrates used the city of Nogales is a name of city in the borders of USA and Mexico. Half of the city is gone to Mexico and remaining half of the city gone to USA in the state of Arizona. So in one of their works, the Lyrates used the city of Nogales on the border between USA and Mexico as the best example how institutions in USA helped the prosperity of even the poor people in USA, whereas the same culture, same geography in Mexico, lack of this inclusive institutions resulted in economic crisis in Mexico. And as you are aware, the USA has built big wall separating Mexico and USA to avoid exodus and infiltration of people for job from Mexico to USA, beginning with a description of Nogales in Arizona and Nogales in Sonora. Sonora is in Mexico and Arizona is in USA. The authors question the reasons for dramatic difference in living standards on either side of the wall separating two cities. Just wall separates these two cities. Even city name is same. Nogales city, part is in Arizona, the other part is in Sonora, one is in USA, another is in Mexico. So separating two cities. The tale of two cities, in their opinion, the Nobel laureates focus this as a case study of tale of two cities. Nogales is cut in half by fence. If you stand by this fence and look north, Arizona, part of Arizona stretches out ahead of you. Its residents are relatively well off, rich, have long average lifespans, and most children receive higher education in Nogales of USA. Property rights are secure in Nogales of Arizona. People know they will get to enjoy most of the benefits from their investments. Free elections provide residents with the opportunity to replace politicians with whom they are not satisfied. Courtesy today's election results in USA. They are replacing, thinking they will get something new, something more for their prosperity. If you look at south of Nogales, instead, you see Sonora in Mexico, just contrary, opposite to what is there in Arizona. Look at this fence is the divides Mexico and USA. Mexican part is well developed, USA part is well developed, and Mexican part is so backward. Even though this is relatively wealthy part, that itself is wealthy part of Mexico. So the residents here are generally considerably poor than other north side of the fence. So basically, the people in Arizona are more wealthier end up with than Mexican Nogales. So even though this is relatively wealthy part of Mexico, the residents here are in general considerably poor. Say, even organized crime are starting and running companies risky in Mexico. Organized crimes are there, underworld dons are there. Starting and running companies, business is risky in Mexico. Corrupt politicians are difficult to remove even if the chances of this have improved since Mexico democratized. In spite of the Mexico becoming a democratic country, chances of removing corrupt politicians is very, very less, just over 20 years. So why do these two half of the same city have such vastly different living conditions? Same city, part of which is in USA is flourished, other part in Mexico is perishing. So geographically they are in the same place. So factors such as the climate and are exactly the same. But what difference is institutional network? Why do these two halves of the same city have such vastly different living conditions? The two populations also have similar origins. Even the race is same. The people in Arizona part and people in Mexico part, USA part, historically the northern area was actually in Mexico. So long-term residents of the city have many common ancestors. Both the Mexican and USA ancestors are common ancestors. Same kind of geography. There are also many cultural similarities. People eat similar food and listen to more or less the same kind of music on both sides of the fence. All this is substantiated by Nobel laureates, how institutions can make the difference, keeping all other factors constant. The race, geography, everything. So historically, Spanish colonizers imposed extractive institutions, exploitative institutions on the Aztec Empire, while more inclusive institutions were developed in areas that became United States and Canada. Areas that were become part of United States and Canada developed inclusive institutions, whereas Spanish colonies imposed extractive institutions, where only few dominate the wealth of the economy. So this historical difference has resulted in the northern part of Nogales, Arizona being significantly more prosperous than its southern counterpart in Mexico. So the decisive difference is thus not geography or culture, but institutions that matters for the growth and development of the countries and creation of wealth and distribution of the wealth. The decisive difference is thus not geography or culture, but institutions. So the people who live north of fence live in USA economic system, which gives them to choose their education and profession. They are also part of USA political system, which gives them broad political rights. South of the fence, residents are not as fortunate as the people in the north. They live under other economic conditions, and the political system in Mexico limits their potential to influence legislation. This year's laureates have shown that the divided city of Nogales is not an exception. Only they quoted the case study of Nogales. Instead, it is part of the clear pattern with roots that go back to the colonial times. It goes back to the whole colonial system in the world, where Britishers and Europeans ruled different countries in the world. The example of the divided city of Nogales, where the US side has greater economic opportunities, political rights compared to the Mexican side, illustrated how institutions impact prosperity. Look at this photo. The left side is Mexico, the right side is USA. Almost you can see this barren land in the Mexican part. Well, bungalows in the northern side in Arizona. Beginning with a description of Nogales, Arizona and Nogales, Sonora, the authors question the reasons for the dramatic difference in living standards on either side of the wall separating these two cities. In fact, the newly elected president of USA promised as an election manifesto to build a wall preventing infiltrators from Mexico to USA. That itself speaks of the poverty that exists in Mexico, and the living standards are very, very poor. This book focuses on how some countries have managed to achieve high levels of prosperity while others consistently failed. Countries that have managed to achieve high level of well-being have demonstrated stable high rates of economic growth for a long time. So the state of the economy is called sustainable development. Countries that have managed to achieve high levels of well-being have demonstrated stable and sustainable development. As I already indicated, UK Europeans ruled, acquired, colonized majority of the countries in the world, except very, very few, some 20 to 30 countries. They ruled all parts of the world. Even British Empire only managed to establish its first colony in Ireland in 1556. Their neighbors, Ireland to UK, several decades after Portugal and Spain claimed land on the African continent and the Americans continent and the America too. So these Nobel laureates examined Europeans' colonization of large parts of the globe. One important explanation for the current differences in the prosperity is the political and economic systems that the colonizers introduced or chose to retain from the 16th century onwards, whether it is Malaysia or Thailand, Singapore, Indonesia, a different set. Come to Afghanistan, Pakistan, the Middle East, the political system is different. So basically, when Europeans colonized large parts of the world, the existing institutions sometimes changed dramatically. Australia, New Zealand, USA, South Africa. But not the same way everywhere. Why not? India was there. Pakistan was part of European colony. Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. Why not? There are certain reasons. In some colonies, the purpose of the colonizers, the Europeans, was to exploit the indigenous population and extract natural resources to benefit the colonizers. And of course, after independence, countries like India, Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, South Korea flourished by virtue of establishing inclusive institutions. But in those days, they established institutions for the benefit of colonizers. In other cases, the colonizers built inclusive political and economic systems for the long-term benefit of European settlers. Like USA, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, they established built inclusive political and economic systems, institutions. And now the people living in, if you look at the income, 20% of the poorest countries, 20% of the poorest countries, and their income is so low, 20% of the richest countries' income is 30 times higher than the poorest 20% of the countries in the world. 20% of richest countries in the world, their income is 30 times higher than 20% of the countries who are poorest. In the opinion of this Democrats, not my opinion. One important factor that influenced the type of colony that developed was population density of the area that was to be colonized. As you are aware, when UK Britishers entered Australia, and of course USA too, the existing population was so less, it was a green field for them. No threat of localites. Free to acquire, establish. Even they brought laborers, slaves to develop countries like Australia. Even convicts were brought there to develop. No resistance from local people. So the density of population was very less in Australia, New Zealand, whereas the density of population in other Asian countries like India and present Pakistan was already dense. So basically, this Nobel laureates are of the opinion the policies, the institutions established by Europeans, UK, and are with a different purpose. Larger indigenous population, once defeated, offered lucrative opportunities for cheap labor. Countries like India, laborers from India taken to Sri Lanka to work in tea estates, taken to Mauritius to work in sugar cane fields, taken to South Africa to work in sugar cane fields, taken to Fiji Islands. So different, few countries have become lucrative opportunities for cheap labor, and they took Indian labor. To quote a example of Indian labor taken to different countries. And of course, now they're flourishing. That is a different issue. A large indigenous population, wherever UK invaded, converted as a lucrative opportunity for cheap labor. This resulted in fewer European settlers moving to already densely populated countries like India. Why Europeans didn't settle in more numbers in India? Because already densely populated. They have chosen other countries where the population is very, very less. And their policy to establish institutions also differed. Places that were more sparsely populated offered less resistance to the colonizers and less labor to exploit. So more European colonizers moved to these sparsely populated places like Australia, New Zealand, and USA. Colonies with many colonizers, settlers colonize, need to have inclusive economic institutions. They have established inclusive economic institutions in these countries where colonizers want to settle. That is the reason why these countries are more prosperous and wealthy than other countries today. That incentivize settlers to work hard and invest in their new homeland with these institutions. The contemporary differences in living conditions between Nogales USA and Nogales Mexico are thus largely due to the institutions that were introduced in the Spanish colony that later became Mexico and the colonies that became USA. These are the institutions responsible. This pattern is similar across the colonized world. It's not Nogales, it is common among all countries in the world and does not depend on whether the colonizers happen to be British, French, or Portuguese or Spanish. They followed the similar pattern to develop the institutions, inclusive institutions for growth of those countries, to make those countries more comfortable to live and settle. European colonizers introduced or kept institutions that promoted long-run prosperity. However, in the richest and most densely populated colonies, institutions were more extractive, exploitative, local population less likely to lead prosperity. India is the best example. When the Nobel laureates studied urbanization in the centuries prior to colonization, before colonization, they studied the urbanization prior to colonization. They did not find similar pattern. Only after colonization, this difference in wealth and living standards is more seen between the countries. So more urban and thus richer parts of the world remain more urban and richer. More urban and thus richer parts of the world remain more urban and richer. So in addition, if you look at the parts of the globe that were not colonized, we do not find any reversal of fortune. There also we don't see much improvement, which were not occupied by colonizers. The laureates demonstrated that this led to the reversal of future. The places that were relatively speaking, in comparison, richest at their time of colonization are now among the poorest. A few countries which were richest before colonization, now they are poorest. The laureates have also shown that this reveals mainly occurred in association with the Industrial Revolution. Technical innovations sweeping across the world were only able to take hold in places where institutions had been established. So Industrial Revolution took place in the countries where strong institutions were established. So higher mortality among the colonizers, the lower today's GDP per capita. Higher mortality among the colonizers, the lower today's GDP per capita, like India and other developing countries or underdeveloped countries, even Ethiopia. So the answer is settler mortality. How dangerous it was to colonize an area affected by types of institutions that were established. So India was home for so many deadly diseases, obnoxious diseases. So the settlers don't want to settle in, colonizers don't want to settle in India. The laureates have also developed an innovative theoretical framework that explains why some societies become stuck in the trap with what the laureates call extractive institutions. Few countries are trapped in the extractive institutions, exploitative institutions. Why escaping from this trap is so difficult. However, they also show that the Nobel laureates show that change is possible and that new institutions can be formed. In some circumstances, a country can break free of its inherited institutions to establish democracy and the rule of law. In the long run, these changes also lead to reduced poverty. settler mortality, as I already indicated, more European settlers, the greater probability of establishing economic system that promoted long-run economic growth. The Nobel laureates have shown that another factor that contributed to the institutional differences between the countries who are rich and poor, the severity of the diseases, as already indicated. More severity of diseases, they didn't opt for such countries. Similarly, diseases that were found in India were considered more numerous and dangerous to the British colonizers than those in New Zealand and Australia. The incidence of disease was more in few countries. So one important reason for this is the extractive institutions that European colonizers either establish or choose to keep if it is benefited them. Say, for example, in India, railways, education, health sectors, land records and survey of lands was done by British people. Important reason for this is extractive institutions that European colonizers either established or choose to keep if it is benefited them to eradicate these major diseases, at least for their health. Railways for transporting the raw material from different parts of the country to the Europe. And land survey and settlement records for administrative reasons, not for prosperity. So the laureates provided an explanation for why some countries are rich and others are poor. They have given reasons why few countries are rich and few countries are poor. The richest 20% of the world's countries, 20% rich top 20 countries are now around 30 times richer than poorest 20% of the countries of the world. This figure speaks of that. Reducing the vast differences in income between countries is one of our time's greatest challenges. Biggest challenge now today is how to reduce the vast differences in income between countries is the biggest challenge. So the Nobel laureates have demonstrated the importance of societal institutions to reduce these differences and overcome this challenge by creating societal institutions. In the opinion of the chairman of the Committee for Economic Sciences Nobel Prize, that is the reason why they have chosen this economist for their work for Nobel Prize in Economics. Income gap between the rich and the poorest countries is persistent. Even now, today, although the poorest countries have become richer, they are not catching up with most prosperous. No doubt India is flourishing, catching up. It's very difficult to compete with GDP of USA. Where is 50 trillion and where is 5 trillion, 4 trillion economy of India. Although the poorest countries have become richer, definitely India have become richer, but we are not catching up with most prosperous in the opinion of, to quote an example, in the opinion of the Nobel laureates. The laureates' work demonstrates that long-term impact of Europe's former empires on growth is factor that differences in prosperity between nations. So they attribute the policy of institutional development by Britishers is the root cause for this difference in income and wealth of the nations. Why? This year's laureates have found new and convincing evidence for one explanation for this persistent gap between differences. That is because of societal institution. Why this difference between the countries is due to the societal institutions. Inclusive institutions are systems that allow and encourage participation by majority of people in economic activities. By majority of people in economic activities participating through inclusive institutions, ensuring that resources and opportunities are accessible to broad segment of the society. Look at this photo. Rural tribal women in Gujarat with few liters of milk in their cans, walking to the nearest milk producers cooperative society. This is the best example of inclusive institutions established after independence by National Dairy Development Board. Amul in Gujarat, Nandini in Karnataka. Institutions that were created to exploit the masses are bad for long-term growth, while institutions established with fundamental economic freedom and the rule of law are good for this. And Amul is the best example. They try to demonstrate empirically that inclusive institutions leads to long-term economic growth and higher standards of living, while exploitative institutions lead to economic decline and poverty. Amul from Gujarat is example for inclusive institutions. Importance of quality of institutions. They studied the types of institutions established by colonies in different colonies.
Sir, we lost connection, I think.
Umesh, can you please call sir and inform?
Yes, sir, I am calling, sir. Sorry for the inconvenience caused. There is some network issue. Sir is reconnecting. Meanwhile, I request if any of the audience have any questions, please post here in the chat box or Q&A section, or you can raise your virtual hand after once the session ends, so that we will unmute you and you can ask the questions. tomorrow we have a session in the afternoon at 3 p.m. on physics Nobel laureates.
Sir, just a moment. There was,
Professor is coming back?
sir,
Sir, there is some internet issue at his end.
always been supporting case.
No, no, hey,
Yeah.
I was actually having a class, so I come back and immediately I started, took some time, so I got it ultimately.
Sir was my teacher in college.
Yeah,
of
I understood because the Agriculture University in Bangalore.
Is one of the best
Yeah.
teachers of
So he's delivering a wonderful talk.
exercise.
It's a wonderful talk. It is nice talk, very lucid, very lucid.
Sir, just a moment. Sir is reconnecting. In a few minutes, he will be joining. Sorry for the inconvenience.
ಇವಾಗ ಇದನ್ನೇ ಇದು ಕನ್ಕ್ಲೂಡ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ. ಹಲೋ, ಗೆಟಿಂಗ್ ದಿ ಕನೆಕ್ಷನ್. I will conclude the presentation by going through this opinion of Nobel laureates on differences in the wealth of the nations, rich countries becoming richer and poor countries becoming poor. He attributes the reasons for basically inclusive institutions, and the motive of institutions established by colonizers was to plunder maximum resources in the short term rather than promoting long-term economic development. So basically, you can attribute these reasons for the present-day melodies by this. You look at this Nandini success in Karnataka, importance of quality institutions, and even at the extreme villages, rural side of the country, landless farmers are making a living out of the courtesy, the inclusive institutions developed in India, And that's what exactly the Nobel laureate says. Another example of inclusive institutions, International Flower Action Center in Bangalore, small flower growers starved of marketing facilities now have in global standards International Flower Action Center, which is there in Bangalore city, facilitating the trade between farmers from Bangalore and the buyers across the globe. So the role of institutions is very, very important. Hence, inclusive institutions, the masses can mobilize and become revolutionary threat. If not, if there is a gap, what happened in Sri Lanka, what happened in Bangladesh can happen tomorrow in Pakistan or Afghanistan or Ethiopia or Namibia, and democracy will become plutocracy. Means power and wealth is regulated in the hands of few people. Inequality will continue, and economic inequality has skyrocketed since the early 2000s, and pointed out that high levels of income and wealth inequality makes possibility of democracy become plutocracy. So top 1% in India holds 40% wealth, as per the World Inequality Lab report. And in fact, the government initiative to bring these poor people above poverty line is the need of the. So geography and climate is very, very important in few countries. So countries closer to the equator are poorer. However, according to the Nobel laureates, according to the laureates, this is not only due to climate, but also due to lack of societal institutions. The first is a conflict, and however resources are allocated and who holds decision-making power in a society is also matters. The second is that masses sometimes have the opportunity to exercise power by mobilizing and threatening ruling elite. And this is what happened in even in Myanmar, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka. The model developed by the Nobel laureate has been used to explain the democratization process in Western Europe at the end of the 19th century and in the early 20th century. So the model has been used to explain how democratization process helped the Western Europe to flourish and develop, become more wealthy. So Great Britain was expanded in several stages, each of which was preceded by general strikes. Situation was no different from in Sweden. Model has also been used to explain why some countries alternate between democracy and non-democracy, like Pakistan. Sometime military ruler comes, and sometime elections, and the democracy and dictatorship makes the economy more vulnerable for this kind of economic crisis. So insurgencies have been ongoing in Myanmar since 1948. So this is the best example. So the east-west grid of downtown Rangoon is the one of the outcome of such lack of institutions and progressive institutions, inclusive institutions. The Nobel laureate's work has had a decisive influence on continued research in both economics and political science. So basically, the insights regarding how institutions work is more important, and India is in the process of developing such institutions which are very crucial for healthy growth of economy and development and reduce the gap between rich and poor in the world. I think now the signal has come. I will switch on to the my laptop. If any questions, we can attend.
Yes, sir. There are a few questions in the chat box.
Yeah. Sir, thank you very much for enlightening us on the work of Nobel laureates and your talk on how USA and Mexico border, the tale of two cities, really excellent. How Nogales is still developing, whereas Arizona has developed into such a wonderful place. Sir, on behalf of KSTA, we are very, very thankful to you for your very enlightening talk. I'm sure there are no words to adequately express my appreciation for your insightful and scholarly talk. Sir, thank you very much. And I have a question, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, Ramesh. Tell me, Ramesh.
Sir, while inclusive institutions are widely believed to foster economic growth, to what extent do they also contribute to enhancing gross national happiness?
Happiness index.
Yes.
Happiness index. That, yeah. In fact, happiness index is most happiest countries in the world are Scandinavian countries: Norway, Finland, Denmark, and those 4 countries. That is purely psychological in addition to the wealth of the nation, Ramesh. Happiness index, health index, growth index.
Yes, sir.
Sometimes conflicts. The tribal population in India,
Yes, sir.
from health point of view, they are not so wealthy, but their happiness index is very, very high.
Like, for example, Bhutan.
Yeah, Bhutan, happiness index. In fact, we visited Bhutan, and you see people are so smiley, so healthy, and so courteous. Feel like to spend some more time there.
Yes, sir.
Happiness index, institutional. The king,
Yes, sir.
it is kingdom,
Right.
but at the same time,
Yeah.
they also have that representation to the people.
Yes, sir.
In the advisory body of the Bhutan. Ramesh.
Thank you, sir. So, Umesh, over to you for questions.
Yes, sir. Sir, there is one question from Dr. A.T. Kishore. Aspirational Vision 2047 of Vikasit Bharat. When viewed from this discussion, key finding, could you enlighten us of the possibilities of India attaining Vishwaguru status?
Possibility of India
Attaining Vishwaguru status.
Because basically reviving the economic, political, and social transformation and adopting our traditional philosophy of satisfaction, material outlook also matters. And it is not only the economic factors, the morality, culture also plays in Indian context. We can achieve up to certain extent.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Because
of this connectivity issues, I could not give a little more information, and I am sorry for that. But India is more pertinent example for Nobel Prize laureates theory and analysis of difference between poor and rich countries, and the need for inclusive institutions, and change and transformation and innovativeness.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Umesh.
There is one more question. Yes, please introduce yourself and ask, sir.
About question is about?
He will ask himself, sir. I have added them in the list. Yes, sir. Please go.
I could not get it. What exactly the question is?
Hello, sir. Can I ask a few questions?
Yes. Please go ahead, sir.
Yeah. I would like to know what the economists say about the political system that can help in the setting up of institutions, and also the religious system, religious beliefs in a country that can play an important role in setting up of institution, as well as the presence of homogeneous racial group. Will it be responsible in a positive way in the development of the economy? So these factors have they considered? Please answer.
Sir, I will give a live example of belief, customs. Say in Indian tradition and system, selling of milk and milk products like is not acceptable. In village system, they used to share the milk and milk products free of cost with their neighbors. Now the same activity is converted into economic activity, major source of income, livelihood, and the government of India with their political will and contribution of institutions like NDDB, National Dairy Development Board, participation of everybody in this process changed the very economic and political shape in the rural Gujarat and Karnataka, sir.
Yes, sir.
So no doubt politics are there, and there is a need for change of mindset to take advantage of this role of new institutions. And as you said, there is a need for like-minded, homogeneous people coming together to build that inclusive institution for prosperity and growth of the country and the wealth of the nation, sir.
Yes, sir. Well, what about the example of China, sir? If China, even though it's not a democratic country, because of its drive towards development, it has been able to do very well in economics. So democracy itself is not very essential in the initial stages, I feel, in the development of a country. Would you agree?
To a certain extent, it is true. Even our Nobel laureates has indicated exception to China's growth and prosperity, sir. Dictatorship with a good vision, dictatorship with vision and mission also can achieve this reduced inequality in income. That's what exactly our Nobel laureates indicated China as an example for dictatorship.
That's what we
Still
need.
they can
Perhaps we need that in our country, sir.
Yes, sir. We need dictatorship, but at the same time, plurality of India.
Because the democracy in our country is not working very well because of the inequalities in education. The people awareness of the people in the political system is very poor. So therefore, they are not able to participate properly in the political system.
Plurocracy, where wealth and education is vested in the hands of few.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Sorry, in fact, you rightly indicated, and our Nobel also subscribed to this opinion: dictatorship, democracy, and concern. And they have quoted the example of China also, sir. China and Singapore for democracy, China for concentration of power.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, we have taken up all the questions. If any questions,
yes, sir.
please reach us through email so that we will.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Sir,
What do you, Ramesh, sir?
Dr. Ramesh, I thank Dr. Ramesh for giving me opportunity to share my view and opinion of Nobel laureates, sir.
We are fortunate to have you for this webinar. In spite of you leaving for Australia tomorrow, you made it possible to deliver the talk, sir. We are very
To
grateful.
see this UK farmer colony, how they have developed from academic perspective. Also, I am going, Ramesh.
Oh, very nice, sir. Next year, Nobel laureate series. Again, you can give one more talk on how economic inequalities can disturb the development of countries. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay.
So I also thank all the participants both on Cisco WebEx and YouTube platform. We had with us Dr. Kushika sir, Dr. Radha Gupta, Dr. A.T. Kishore, Dr. Sindhu Anup, Dr. Shivanand, Dr. Adarsh, Dr. Harsha, Dr. Ganapati, Dr. Qureshi, and all the senior faculty who have joined on this for this webinar. On behalf of KSTA, we are very grateful to you, and also Meenakshi Patil for asking such a relevant question. On behalf of KSTA, thank you very much. Tomorrow we'll be having a talk by eminent technologist, Professor S.N. Onkar. He will be talking on the Nobel Prize winning physics research tomorrow. Tomorrow it will be in the afternoon. I request all of you to join and also encourage your students and colleagues to join. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ramesh. Thanks very much.
Sir, happy Bonvoyage.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, Anando.